they say that America is full of gold. As a young kid and with no educations, I was fooled by that term. I was really thinking about that American was gold. Everything was gold. Like the car was gold, the street was gold, the house was gold.
And they weren't used to like anything that was going on because we came from a village, and they brought us to like a whole new world with filled with technology and all these new things that we weren't used to.
When I was found out that I was come to the US, I was so happy and was like jump around. And every night I was dreaming that I would come with my dad, and I was so happy. And also I was sad too, because if I left, I will let my family in Vietnam too, my friends. So it's a sad thing too.
These are 4 teens from 3 families who have fled the uncertainty and fear in their homelands and are adjusting to a new life in a new place. Their roots are in Southeast Asia, but their futures are in America.
Once I was in America, it was different than what I had thought. It was, from now what I've seen is it has a lot of cultures, a lot of different type of people that I ever first time met in my life.
When I'm right here to the United States, the challenge is like the first thing is language, because I don't know how to speak English, and like the culture in here and the law in here, like, because we don't know what we're gonna do, if we do it's right or wrong.
I don't know what my school gonna going on, because I don't even know the English. Like when I was first come here, it was so hard for me.
And I also had a hard time making new friends because I didn't understand what they were saying.
It takes time for me to overcome all of these challenges that I face. Basically, just being with friends, that are in these cultures and learn from them. And then having sponsors to guide me, teaches me, to get used to the American cultures.
When does a newcomer, whatever we want to call them, refugee, immigrant, Jarai, Banar, Kaho, when does a newcomer in our area, in our city, in our county, in the Piedmont, when do they cease to be a newcomer?
I mean, I call myself an American, but like, where do I identify myself with my tribe or with my people? Am I wrong for calling myself an American? Or is it okay for me to call myself Banal or Montagnard? Not a lot of people know like what a Montagnard person is.
Well, the Montagnards were the indigenous people who were settled in the highlands, and they were pretty much ignored by the ethnic Vietnamese in the lowlands until the 50s, when roads began to be built in and there was a realization this is valuable land. And so Vietnamese began to move in and the ethnic tensions increased.
Hope my family will have a better life, and so I hope that I could visit my grandparents in Vietnam also. So because I really want to see them now.
One of the things is this significant concern about family members that they left behind in Vietnam, that they're worried about their well-being. They feel guilty sometimes for being here, where they're safe and other family members are not.
It's hard for us to accept that we're in 2 different places and we've become like different people.
And hope they can help us, so like help us in Vietnam, like my people in Vietnam too.
My family in a camp for 2 years because of the stuff that my father had done for, his people.
Philippe was born in Cambodia after his family fled there from Vietnam. His father Min fought against the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War as part of a guerrilla group called Full Row. Over 25 years after the Vietnam War ended, Min knew people from his tribe were still being persecuted by the Vietnamese government. He reached out to his fellow Full Row members to help. News of the escape quickly spread throughout the tribes in the highlands of Vietnam. Hundreds of refugees began fleeing to Cambodia. Unable to support all of these people on his own, Min turned to the UN, which came to his aid and helped establish a refugee camp. The support Min was giving to the Montagnard people did not go unnoticed by the Vietnamese government, which was soon threatening the family he had left behind. It became clear that Min and his family would also have to flee to the refugee camp with the other Montagnards.
During the Vietnam War, American Special Forces developed strong ties with the indigenous Montagnards, who were then trained to be frontline fighters in the highlands on behalf of the U.S. 11 years after the end of the war, a group of Montagnards showed up at the Thai-Cambodia border. Advocates petitioned the U.S. government to accept these Montagnards into the U.S. refugee resettlement program. And so there was an ongoing flow of Montagnards from 1987 on up until the present. The first wave of 200 mostly single men who had direct ties to the Vietnam vets came in '86. A second wave of approximately 400 fighters came in 1992, and the third wave of about 900, mainly civilian families, came in 2002. This last wave of Montagnards were not directly connected to the Vietnam War, but were still being persecuted for protesting the Vietnamese government as they were seeking religious freedom.
2001, we have protests in Vietnam, in Dak Lak City. After protest, because we can stay in village, because a lot of Vietnamese government and Vietnamese police, they're looking for us.
In addition to the three big waves, additional Montagnards have continued to come as family-sponsored immigrants.
Among these families was Dee and Lisa's father, Oy. He was one of the first 12 men that escaped, leaving his wife and 4 children behind. It would be 11 years before Dee and Lisa would be reunited with their father.
It was a hard time, and I was like so miss him so much, so I couldn't eat like a month because I miss him.
So sad and nervous for everything I have to do, like when I go to school, because like someone gonna look at me, because they think my dad betrayed to the country, that's why they look bad to me.
Thank you.
Min had also helped Mai's father, Nam, as he escaped over the border into Cambodia in 2001. Nam fled on his own first and sent for his family once he arrived at the refugee camp.
Chierngan pang jol sot kah to narip tam kutuk hair lao rama hen turn sebot pang jol tat ma hen rama hen kit rap de turn rap de na hen chier dong han rat de ke ma pon de tamir na like pusal.
We went to the jungles for days. I remember my mom staying up with a campfire and we were sleeping on hammocks on rainy nights.
Montagnards arrived in Greensboro as part of a group of 900 who will be moving to North Carolina over the next few weeks. Volunteers were on hand waiting to help transition the Montagnards into their new homes and communities.
North Carolina was chosen to be the site of resettlement for the first group of Montagnards. One, because we had a very successful resettlement program in North Carolina, and we had special forces here, so that was also a draw to the community.
Greensboro was very responsive to the Montagnards and other refugees too.
The role of refugee resettlement agencies is to connect folks to services, to help give them the case management, to be able to help with some mental health and support. But really what you need is that long-term connection, that long-term friendship, folks that can walk side by side the Montagnards, the newcomers, to be able to help them integrate into society so that they can be successful.
It was a learning experience for all of us when they first arrived. After they had been here a week, we realized that they had brought 5 suitcases, but in the suitcases were no clothes. They had brought Montagnard ceremonial clothes, food, they had brought gifts, but no clothes for themselves. So that was one of the first immediate needs that we needed to do, was to make sure they had the essentials.
So the sponsors could be helping the Montagnards with a wide range of things. It could be bringing them to the grocery store, navigating all sorts of things that we take for granted.
So within a week or a little over, all of them were in a school or an English language class in Greensboro.
I think I remember you being shyer.
Very much so.
And depending on your big sister to help you out when you first came to Newcomers a lot, right? What's been the hardest thing leaving Newcomers and going to Grimsley? What was the hardest thing about that for you?
I think to communicate with another different students, like American people, but they're so nice, they just helping.
Oh, that's great.
If you have sponsors that are in the community that are friends, that are liaisons, that are support systems, that can continue to working with families, that really helps make that process of acculturation so much stronger.
So proud to have American passport. Oh, come on. Here you go. My pictures. Yay! Thank you, Helen.
Very proud.
Thank you. Yay, I got my passport.
That's huge.
Even with the help of refugee resettlement agencies and sponsors, families continue to face challenges years after resettling in America.
I do translations for them. I'm the mainly one that does translations in the house. When mom get a job, paperwork, that kind of stuff, I have to do translations.
So the Montagnards aren't any different than other refugee groups. Children tend to adjust and acculturate more quickly than parents do. And sometimes that can be a form of tension for parents because they want their children to hold on to their Montagnard culture or their traditional cultural ways.
Sometimes it does, stressful or sometimes it does kind of take away like your free time or the other stuff that you want to pursue because you have to help them. But I have nothing to regret because they're my family and it's important to help the family.
I feel like a sense of like responsibility for us to like take care of our parents when they do get old. I think that's very important. They've taken care of us well since we were like babies, and they've taken us on this like wild journey, and it's important to us to just do that small amount of deed for them. We can't give them back what they've given to us.
Every young person that we've talked to has a deep respect for their elders. They are fully aware of the suffering and sacrifices that their parents, grandparents went through in order to come here. They know that there is this very deep loss.
Or even if the children don't remember Vietnam, they still understand the concept of oppression. And that's a significant part of their life.
A lot of the Montagnards have become Christians in this last century. Protestant missionaries in particular were very active starting in the 50s. And so a lot of people were converted from their traditional animist traditions.
My church and my religion is really important to me because I know that if everything else fails and if everyone and everything else abandons me in this world, that it's the only thing I have to hold on to. It's something that's like embedded into me, and I know that it's something I can really hold on to if all else fails.
Basically, they just want me to live through what God's, want us to live, and I'm just trying to do my best to live what they taught me. Of course, I can have fun. Of course, I can do things that other kids, like normal American kids, can do, like partying or whatever it is. But it's not my choice. That's not how I view myself as. I just want to live how God want me to live. That's what I really want.
Chọc để chuông bự khó hộp ăn cặp mò ích on the night. Thì cặp ích con cụp này ăn cái nào smart tầm nào tầm đây gì cụ quá chỉ đi cụ tầm nào cho nó.
As the youth adjust to their new way of life, they also try to hold on to Montagnard traditions and culture.
It's important to us like hold on the Montagnard culture, tradition, because that is to like make you remember who you are and where you're from, and like wherever you go, you remember you is Montagnard, and remember what your culture.
To hold on my cultures, I still keep my culture like skirt or something to wearing, and will never forget my language, still speaking with my mom with my own language. So I will not forget it.
And food can like express who you are, so I feel like it's important for them to remember like where they came from and where their food came from, and it's like a history of its own.
It's hard to remember my culture because I've been here for 10 years and I'm using to American culture.
Many Montagnard refugees cannot go back to visit Vietnam or their families. Holding on to traditions is all they have to remember their culture.
Like you forget your culture, that means you is nothing. and you don't know who you are.
One of the things that is unique about the Montagnard culture is because the Montagnards are an indigenous culture, and because they feel as a group that they are potentially dying out, that it is so important to retain their history. And their children understand this, and their children want to keep this alive. And so that's why the children are passionate about this.
You know you're different. It's obvious you're different. Your skin's different. You look different. You act different. But when they point it out to you in front of your face, it's like, what am I supposed to do about it? Okay, this is my home now. I have to be like them, because if I'm not, then who am I? Because I don't have a home anywhere else.
All young people ultimately have a choice. They can accept the tradition. The other extreme would be to fully reject the tradition, and then you have shades of gray in between. And it's that scale of accepting and rejecting that for young people, it's a struggle, you can see.
I've accepted myself the way I am. I choose to embrace both of my cultures. Being American and being Montagnard is a huge part of who I am and who I choose to be in the future and how I identify myself.
Small groups of Montagnards have settled in other parts of the country. However, there are more Montagnards in North Carolina than any place outside of Southeast Asia.
These are the amazing things that this community has. And when we want to say, despite war, despite relocation, despite all the very terrible things that have gone on for this group of people, yet they persist. And looking at what they're able to do has oftentimes been overlooked.
I think it's special that we did have that connection with the American armed forces back in the Vietnam War, and it's important for them to recognize and remember the Montagnard people because they were a part of their history. So I think it's important that we are also part of their society now.
I feel so great with everything I have done, and it's amazing, cause the first time when I come to America, I don't know how to speak English, and just 2 years I have to learn English really hard, and I can speak English a little bit.
con cầm nặc xa đó, tận này cầm mình được ghé nào dìa, ba này cuồng hôm bằng là ghét hôm, anh ghét làm, anh bằng ghét non tây, collect, anh bằng ghét nào lọ can, anh bằng ghét, ghét nào blau cất phù mì.
I believe that God sent me here for a reason, to help my people. So it would be really cool that I can go back to my country and teach those kids, like myself, to know that, hey, the world is rounded, not flatted. So that's my hope for the future.
After I graduate, I think I'm gonna find a good job. I want to be a illegal lawyer, so I could help the people from another country. So they came here so they could have someone to help them, like my family.
I think this story is important to the community because we can see that there are people who come to America who are very motivated and given the right support can be very successful.
Mình nào cũng gọi một tí cái mà bữa nào mic nếu bây giờ cái mà lẹ mắt bồ làm đèn đồ bồ cái nào cho ăn cả kít win mà hên bữa sau mà hên.
We are all immigrants and that we came from our own places and our own backgrounds to find a new home in America, and it's important for Americans to welcome people of all races and all types of backgrounds. It's gonna be long.
Okay, clap.
Okay.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Can do all that bang up my. I got what that? I'm so sorry. It's so backward. It's like confusing him and confusing me.